Hello, hello, everyone. Beautiful existence here. Happy Sunday. For those of you that don't know why I'm doing these on Sundays, besides just personal logistic reasoning, Sunday is exactly what it sounds like. It's the sun's day. And so lots of light and information is shared on this day. Every day of the Gregorian calendar has a planetary affiliation, and the sun is where I'm being called to do these through. So, anyways, welcome, welcome. Um, so, a little bit, I guess, of context I'll start with here before I go into the real life of astrology. Because gratefully, I am able to do this live on this Sunday, because that wasn't necessarily going to be the case even 2 days ago. Because I live on what is called the Eastside of Seattle, which many people might know as Bellevue or Kirkland, or especially Redmond, because Redmond houses Microsoft's corporate offices. It houses Nintendo's corporate offices. It's pretty significant. We have a lot of the tech giants here in our backyard, and the East Side has predominantly been a mecca for them, which has to do with what I'm going to talk about and what I have channeled this week, because I had a lot of time to be able to do some stuff, um, which astrology has had a the word that's coming to me is a disastrous effect. But in reality, everything's interwoven. The more that you understand the different elements of astrology and that you can watch, see, feel them, the dimensionality of the differences and how you approach understanding mapping of material energies and frequencies in this realm, in this dimension, the better that you are, I guess, to have, foresight, to be informed, to gain a perspective. I'll just say this, definitely gaining a perspective that can help in ways that human ego information or, belief bias can do, because these are inherent patterns in material density of energy and frequency in this dimension. And there's many, many ways to be able to see, feel different types of mappings in this realm within embodiment. And astrology is a very long lived, very pertinent, and sometimes extremely acute way of seeing this. So, yeah, I'm here on the east side. Like I said, there's a lot embedded in this area, why I'm here. For people that know me, and my doctoral thesis in compassionate technology, it really makes a lot of sense. But it just makes a lot of sense in general. So I have not just had, look at this. I'm looking at a picture of my boys and I in 2020 with our dumpster burning t-shirts. And our new puppy, Eno, who's sitting on the bed next to me, winking at me. I love you. I love all of you a lot. So much. Anyways, okay, so I guess let's just start, because there's some other things that have come through. So this last week I got intermixed with the bomb cyclone from this area, which I have worked for FEMA before. I grew up on a working farm in a Mennonite territory, which just has sustainability at its core. So working with FEMA years ago and the Seattle Office of Emergency Management was kind of like second nature to me because I grew up with grandparents that not only introduced me to omens, by the way, those that got your omen book, you need to get a hold of me because I have a gift for you. And we're going to start getting into this now that it's live, it's out there. I know Mercury is going retrograde. This is another thing I'm going to talk about in this live because it already showed up and Amazon not super happy, but grateful in the long run for the platform, for the ability to get this information into people's workable hands more and more. So I did a lot of work on that this week because unfortunately, as a sun sign Gemini, Mercury ruled in tropical. I have a lot of personal things sometimes when Mercury is in a retrograde, and it's a really intense retrograde, like this retrograde is going to be. So heads up, in 24 hours, and we are definitely been in it for a couple of weeks, but it is intensifying right now. This Mercury retrograde that has to do with communications, contracts, technology, cars, anything like that. Like you really had to get all of this stuff backed up before now, definitely before tomorrow, because the most intense parts of celestial movements and recalibrations are usually at the beginning and the end. And that was so true this week on multiple levels. And I'm going to get into that. And this is why I titled today's live the real life the real life of astrology, because this absolutely shows itself the more and more that you practice something, just like omens, the more and more you see, feel the dimensionality of different wisdoms, especially those wisdoms that have carried throughout civilizations and cultures for tens of thousands of years, like omens, like astrology. The more information that you have, the better, but you'll just feel it the more that you're around it. It's like you've drank the Kool-Aid, but not in the negative sense. It's you've literally started expanding your perspective in ways that are opening you up dimensionally to different civilizations and cultures and eras and how they approached omens, how they approached tarot, how they approached astrology, and that it's all relevant because everything that we all do is relevant. It's for this whole mechanism all of the time, the good and the bad. That's what I'm just going to say. Whatever we consider good or bad, right or wrong, up or down, black or white, all of it, it's the spectrum of all of it. It's the accumulation of a mass that we can usually see a lot clearer, especially after lengths of time and a historical perspective. So wouldn't you want to know if you're interested or if you're attracted to omens or tarot or astrology? Wouldn't you want to know what the ancient Egyptians knew about it and they practiced in their everyday life? We're opening back up indigenous wisdoms. We are piecing ourselves back into that every lived experience is valid because it is. We all are. We all are valid. Everything that we do, every single minute, free will, collective consensus, it's all valid because it all gives back to this. And we all have the ability to be in a practice, usually through ancient knowledges, plant spirit, different kinds of, techniques and things, alternative abilities to remember, because remembering is where it's at. It'll drive you crazy. Your mind and your life will expand like you can't even fucking believe. And it's going to be a ride. But it's what our lives are doing, especially, those that believe in reincarnation. But even if you don't, you're still in a period of remembering and tapping into all of the brain in even one lifetime. So even if you believe in one lifetime, if you are having a connection with the divine, if you are having a connection with God, establishing, practicing a connection, what do you think that you're connecting back to? Source energy, right? Divine source energy, the all of all, the creator, the creation of all. That's remembering. That's remembering what those in power and position right now and money want to distract us, manipulate us from being in individually and socially. But it's not going to happen for very much longer. Really, it's about less than 170 years that we're in the final throes of the final Data Comoras of these celestial cycles. But man, I'm going to tell you what we're in right now. Our souls fought to be here during this time. We've gathered everything that we can. We've made all the decisions that we can. We've gotten on that boat. We're sailing into the sunset. We've stepped through the portal, some at the very last minute. So, for those that have helped, which I have connected with lately, my neighbors on the east side, thank you. Because you probably helped way more souls, and I knew it as soon as I saw your YouTube channel, than you will ever realize until you're not embodied again, to be able to get onto this boat, into these portals, for what will eventually transpire as a new evolutionary form of humanity in the near distant future. And I did a video on that, the human division, just says what it is. But we're talking about real astrology here, so let me get back to it and pinpoint some of the things that I've been living through, um, because all of our experiences are valid, good, bad, or otherwise. But it is still a very large collective assembly and expression of how astrology can be seen in real life all the time. So this last week, the bomb cyclone hit on Tuesday. What was it? Tuesday, November. I don't even know what day. I know, Saturn. I'm not very good about being a timekeeper all the time. Tuesday, 19th of November, 2024. This bomb cyclone hit multiple states on the West Coast. In the Washington area, it was very distinct where it hit and where it affected hundreds of thousands of people, which is where I live, the Eastside, which immediately to me was a huge indicator. I saw so many signs immediately. The first sign that I saw was when I lost electricity, and for the first time in an area where we usually lose electricity at least once every year, because on what we call the plateau, there's been so much clear cut, which are the hills going into the Cascade Mountain Range. There's been so much clear cut of the tree and the forest to develop houses that the wind that normally would hit this area, um, we've buzzed it all down, so it just is like a straight wind if it comes from the west like that across Lake Sammamish. And because we're up and up going into the foothills and the mountains of the Cascade, a lot of particular level weather phenomena like high winds will skim right over the peninsula, what we call the peninsula, which is like the westernly area with the Olympics of Washington State, skim right over Seattle and literally just like straight shot it for what's in front of the mountains. The only thing that would stop this kind of wind, because the people that were in Cle Elum, the people that were in and going to Spokane that were on the other side of the Cascade Mountains, nothing. They didn't get affected at all by this. It was everybody here, and it wasn't even north or south of Lake Washington, which was very interesting to me immediately. The first indicator, so I had this happen. I was in it. It was intense. Like, it was like definitely like hurricane winds when I lived down in Florida. If you had to like push your body against the wind, and even then it would whip you back. Like, I had to ground myself to walk in some of these bursts, because unfortunately I found myself in and amongst it for a couple of minutes. But we lost power Tuesday evening and didn't get it back until later Friday. So, and there are people that still do not have power right now on Sunday. So that's why I said, first of all, I am lucky that I can even do this right now, and I am super grateful for it. But because of my past, growing up on a farm, working for FEMA, being a digital nomad and van life for a number of years, I had a lot of preparations. I keep a lot of preparations. I've had an emergency list, emergency kits, go bags for decades now, because I just grew up with this mentality of being self-sustaining as much as possible, not perfect at it. I ended up not having a couple of things, but there are a lot of people here that did not have nothing. They, were SOL, as people say. And it was a mad rush at places that were open, like Home Depot and stuff around here, or any of the stores that had backup generators. But within a couple of days, within less than 48 hours, all your perishable food spoils. I threw away hundreds of dollars worth of food, which just sickened me this week, because the volume of that has been happening for the last couple of days, of every household, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of people throwing out all of this food. It was just mind-boggling to me, the resources that not only, had to be discarded, but B, have to be repurchased, and the financial and the emotional stress and strain of things like this. I actually talked to somebody who flew in to help this area from North Carolina, beautiful older woman, just seriously, like, God bless her soul, whatever you wanna say, just words of kindness for humans, because she is still without portable water in North Carolina over a month later, and she's flying out to other places that are being ravaged with other weather phenomena. Just I'm so inspired by how real humans, divine souls inhabiting human bodies, are being activated and called out of their own free will and their own means and resources to be able to help others. I myself have had people, offering to help, and I see it everywhere. And it really is like the thing that lights a divine soul up, to see that kind of care and compassion and love for people, just unattached from ego. It is incredibly inspiring, and I know I am not just inspired, by those actions, but to be that. Um, but we're human and we fall short and we don't always make the best decisions with our free will. So I get that. But the astrology of this area. So the first thing that showed up for me, which was a very interesting observation, but before I lost complete cell phone coverage, because AT&T, T-Mobile, none of it was working out here. You had to be, and I found out within 48 hours, I had to drive right to a cell phone tower around here to be able to get connectivity and to be able to text and call people and let them know I was okay, to just be able to communicate and see what the heck was going on in the world, because you don't have any idea when you're enclosed in this bubble. But last Tuesday, the 19th, is when Pluto went into Aquarius fully. So it's still in a gradient, releasing, releasing, releasing Capricorn. Okay. So that's important to understand. And Pluto is very slow moving planet, 250 odd years in general. So it's going to take months, if, to fully release Capricorn at different degrees. For people that understand astrology, this is how it works. It's actually mathematical. Our ancient gurus and guides to the kings and oracles and stuff, they were Renaissance men and women. They knew astrology, astronomy. They knew mathematics, you know, they knew all of this stuff and used it as it truly is, interwoven, integral to other wisdoms. They used their instinct, their intuition, their alternative abilities to be able to communicate and receive and be able to decipher multiple wisdoms to arrive at conclusions or predictions with the kings, with the royalty, with the people. This is how our mechanism works. It's layered upon layered because that's how we take effortless energy and frequency and break it down into a material density that we can experience, a material density when we're embodied through. So you have to understand interwoven. You have to, in my experience, continue to open up your omnidimensional self and practice. And there, like I said, there's many ways of that. Astrology is one, but this really shows you what was going on. So before I lost connectivity on Tuesday night, I checked PSE, Puget Sound Energy, for what is our local energy, you know, uh, carrier electricity and power utility around here on the east side, at least. It's the predominant one in this area. And they knew that this was coming. And apparently there was some, you know, pre-event planning, but there's still people, hundreds of thousands of people without electricity and power. I think the cell service, they've put up emergency towers. T-Mobile's, you know, T-Mobile's American headquarters is right here on the east side too. I can't make this stuff up. There is definitely astrology that is showing us why just this area was impacted. And I'll get into that in a second. But before I lost power, one of the first indicators that I had was, and that came through late Tuesday night, early in the morning when nobody was using their internet or whatever, right? And I had one freaking bar. I got onto the PSC website for outages and it was just red for miles and miles and miles on just the east side. There's hardly anything else. There's spots up around Bellingham. There's definitely Bainbridge Island. But it was just smack dab here on the east side. And what came through me was first, what people that politically leaning might not want to hear or see, but I was just like, oh, the east side finally like went red. Which is not the takeaway of this, but I thought that it was very comical. That was the first vision and observation that I was being given related to American political context and the whole blue red thing. Because like I said, everything is everything. It all applies. It's all valid, good, bad, or otherwise, which some of it is absolutely horrendous and it sucks, especially if it takes power and control like it has over millions, billions of lives, you know, for decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years, like some of it has. You can't have an imbalance of energy and frequency forever because the one thing that's consistent is change. It can't stay static. It has to always be morphing into something else. That's why for those that believe in reincarnation, we are regenerating our embodiments in an eternal soul because electricity and frequency can't stay static forever. Like even in the ancients that lived for hundreds of years, nothing stays static forever. Even in rock people and crystal people that have attached their soul to a particular energetic pattern in an earthly plane and materiality for millions of years. Millions. Now that is a fucking commitment by that soul. They actually end up transitioning at some point too. It just takes so long that nobody except for a lot of indigenous people practice that knowledge anymore. But it's absolutely valid. Tree people stay alive for hundreds of years or thousands of years. And the things that they have seen and experienced in and around them for all that time, they usually love to show you. Sometimes it's been really traumatic and they are guarded, especially against humans, just like any other. But in general, tree people love to be able to show you what it is that they've been able to see in and through them with their lives. And that's hundreds of years. So, and then you think all the way down to insects in like a day or whatever, or 24 hours or something. Everything has a cycle. All energy is constantly moving at some form or another. And celestials, we have mathematical cycles for them. So it was really poignant. And when that vision came through and I saw that, I knew that something bigger was happening. So what did Pluto give me? Well, I have a predominant Scorpio in tropical with an ascendant. So I very much am attributed to Pluto. I understand Pluto. It's, I wouldn't say it's a planet that scares me, but I know that it doesn't fuck around. Like Pluto, Saturn is a taskmaster. Saturn is kind of like this like love hate, like, that they're right, but you don't want to admit it kind of thing. And at some point Saturn will be just like, that's it, you know, you're getting, you know, conditioned to whatever it is that I've been trying to show you. But Saturn will give you kind of the benefit of the doubt and try to do things to get you to learn the lesson, to make the shift, to do the move, whatever it is. Pluto will just be like, that's it. From the get-go, planet Pluto will just be like, boom, 6 feet under, dig yourself out of this. That's what happened this week. Luckily, I had the know-how and the wherewithal to be able to go through most of this. And it's not easy. Like this was really like difficult in all these years of being in and around the East Side, which has been pretty much most of my adult life. I've never lived in Seattle proper except for 3 months in the summer of 2020, when all of this stuff was happening with CHOP and BLM and everything. And I was just like, never again. I will never again live in Seattle proper. That was enough. That was a super big lesson. Lots of omens came through that summer, though. Tons of omens came through that summer, which was another reason why I started my practice, daily practice, weekly, monthly practice, just whatever, of not only just researching the book, but living it so that I could help show other people how to see these signs and synchronicities that our ancestors have known and carried down through omens for tens of thousands of years. It is crazy. But anyways, the astrology this week. So when I saw that, I knew immediately, it kind of gave me that like comical thing about the affiliation with red or blue in American politics. But there's much, much more behind this. In the first place, this cyclone is not natural made. This cyclone definitely, nefariously, purposefully had been created, which just, it really sucks to think about that, because it wasn't just this area in Seattle that got affected, but there's a lot of places like in Oregon and California that also got affected. Um, so for those people that think, oh yeah, like God's punishing you or anything like that, it just is what it is. It all is relevant. It all is perspective. Sometimes it's just very, very large perspective on a larger social level so other people can see into it easier, right? Because when it's just happening to you, when your astrology is just affecting you, just affecting your life, and especially if you don't have any perspective on it, if you don't understand astrology, if you don't understand the interconnection and interwovenness of different celestial energies and mechanisms at play down here, omens and things that show up around you that are trying to give you hints or trying to help you forecast or affirm. If you don't know any of that stuff, yeah, the world's going to look like fucking chaos a lot of the time. It did for me before I stepped back into being on my what many, I guess, call a spiritual path, but really it's remembering myself, remembering my real soul, remembering why I'm here, remembering, like, on and on and on, right? Like, the interwovenness of everything that I can at least conceptualize in my brain at this point. Um, because that's one of the limitations. When we're embodied, our soul wants to just expand, expand, expand because that's what we naturally are. But when we're in a material form, especially a denser material form, and especially if we don't have those perspective shifts and we're not attracted to them, they're not coming to us, there's a lot of things that can seem very extremely chaotic because you're not getting any kind of perspective on it. But astrology really showed us and is showing the world, what happens with astrological events, right? So Pluto went into Capricorn, the planet of death and destruction, went into the sign of the collective. Just that in and of itself should be, hopefully resonating with you about an entire hundreds of thousands of people in the Pacific Northwest. I don't even know how many tens or hundreds of thousands of people in Oregon and California that were affected in different ways too, or are being affected still in different ways. But it's poignant, okay? This in and of itself should show and help people see. If you got on this boat, if you walk through this portal, if you have not heard or seen anything to this point about why you're in this weird space and you don't understand anything and you're not sure what the hell is going on or anything, if this is resonating with you, it's for a reason because you did walk through the door, because you did get on this boat with us. And this is some of the information that you might want to consider starting to remember. Now, if this information doesn't resonate with you, you didn't walk through the door to this portal and you didn't get on the boat, and it just is what it is. This kind of information might not ever resonate for you. It might resonate for you at any given time in the future. It might resonate for you in the next lifetime or 10 lifetimes from now. Only God, Goddess knows, right? Only your soul and the divine knows. But in this evolutionary time period that we're in, this is an absolute way to see how these other ancient wisdoms are absolutely affecting real life, not just for me, for hundreds of thousands of people in a region. And this goes on all the time, especially with weather events. And especially when they are natural weather events, which I am sorry to say, but a lot of our natural weather events, especially the major destructive ones, even the ones that just went through the Carolinas, Mother Nature didn't do those herself. Her mechanisms have been being distorted and purposely pinpointed on particular places for the nefarious beings of power and control. Again, for this manipulation and all of this stuff. And because they know celestial alignments. They know when these things can be manipulated the best, the easiest in particular ways. And so, to a certain extent, yes, it is natural because Pluto going into Aquarius allowed it to happen, allowed those who create and are creating these destructive forces in our world to purposely keep fear over the public, manipulate, distort, and distract as many souls as they still possibly can. Gotta love my friend. I bring up topics because of a Scorpio ascendant and tropical that are deeper, that are darker. Things that come to me where I can feel them. I've seen visions, I've had channelings of them. And she's like, nope, don't want to talk about it. Don't even want to consider it. Nope, not going to be a part of it. And, there's some of me that immediately is like, you can't address anything unless you walk into it and through it. Like you can't put your head in the sand about things. Just not going to happen. You can put your head in the sand for a while, but man, by the time your head gets jettisoned out of that sand, your entire world is going to fucking crumble around you from what it used to be. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. If you know that you are not doing something, you better do it. You really better do it. Figure it out, piece by piece, step by step. I don't care what it is. You got to reconcile that because there's a reason why it's being shown to you. It's probably being put on your heart, not just your mind. And then you know that it's the truth. Like if it's just resonating inside of you, if it just keeps attracting to you, if you just can't stop doing something, you better fucking face that shit head on. I don't know what to tell you, man. It's going to get harder and harder for you if you don't. But this is astrological event absolutely has shown the world, for those that can hear this and listen, how the celestial cycles completely affect reality. Completely affect reality in one way, shape, or form. So this is how I knew, because I had lots of days of no electricity and no internet or phone. And I had a lot of stuff coming through me. I had a lot of stuff, and which was interesting because I didn't do a lot of channeling or taking notes, but I knew that I had to do this live. I knew that I would have power this weekend, and I knew that whatever it is that I'm saying during this live is what needed to be said. So let's just finish on this one topic because there's a couple other things that have come through that don't have to do necessarily with the reality of astrology or astrology in real life, but they might, and I haven't been able to necessarily correlate them yet, but they definitely came up this week for pertinent reasons as well. But Pluto goes into Aquarius, boom. Like I said, start and the end of a cycle like that, it's going to make itself known. So, for those of you that live on the east side of Seattle or know people that do, this was your wake up call for wherever Pluto is, or Aquarius, but usually Pluto in your charts. So I started looking at charts. I started being called to and looking at lots of different charts. I looked at Bellevue's chart. I looked at Redmond's chart. I looked at Seattle's chart. I even looked into different countries' charts like India for people that are of a predominant group in this area. And I started really finding some interesting things out, things that correlated to the visions that I started receiving about why this happened and what this is showing and how to communicate this to other people. Because I am an omnidimensional author. So that is a person that uses their alternative abilities to collect, usually in a literary form or a media form. That is an absolute literary personage and title and genre that I have coined, and that is in history, and that I'm going to start presenting at academic conferences for. And I'm developing an entire canon on cannabistro.com. So if you know poets, you know authors, historical or living, that are using alternative abilities, which are divinations, astrologies, clairs, mancies, anything that is working with the ineffable plant spirits, ayahuasca, all of that, astral travels, the astrals, and they're producing media or literary. I want to meet them. I want to know them. I want you to share that with me, please. cannabistro@gmail.com. Everything is being housed at cannabistro.com. Anyways, because I am an omnidimensional author, OA, I receive all this information. I sit with it. I gather all of the different interwoven elements of it, and I give it back to you. Media, literary, both, whatever. So the interwovenness of this, I started looking at all of the different astrologies, because astrology was predominantly what has been showing to me as to why this happened, how this happened, who's behind it, all sorts of stuff. I was doing remote viewing. It's interesting. If you start looking at a lot of YouTube channels, this is what also came up in the last 48 hours since I have had cell service and internet again. If you start looking at a lot of the channelers and YouTube channels out there about remote viewing, um, almost all of them are attributed to the military. There is hardly anything that is coming through about nature, which is interesting to me, but when I do, and I didn't even know that because I've never been on a YouTube channel for remote viewing before. That only came up this week for me because of channelers, because of other oracles like me that produce content out there. But I started looking into some of the remote viewing channels. And I know that a lot of people within the military have been trained because MK Ultra, all of this stuff for decades, right? Like just horrid stuff. Horrid stuff that some politicians are going to start to be interconnected and adamantly known are interconnected with that are just, ugh, like I said, shit just needs to shake out, and the celestials are supporting this. And so is the divine because it's unbalanced and it's been unbalanced against the people for a while. So Pluto going into Aquarius is an amazing thing in general because there is just shit that's going to start shaking out that really needs to come to the surface so that we can face it individually and collectively and move through that shit so that it doesn't keep happening in the future because it's not for any of our good. It's not for any of our good that we have weather patterns like this, especially those that are being manipulated with the Earth's natural processes and mechanisms. Like, that's just such a God, it's such a slap in the face to this beautiful fucking planet that has been created and evolving, that we've been evolving with, and that there's so many beingnesses that are, attributed to it, and so much beauty and grace and abundance, and we just bitch slap that thing and manipulate it for our ego content. Like, shame on you. Just gross. Seriously, just oh, my heart's broke. My heart's broke about some of the stuff that I see in remote viewing when I attempt to do it because I don't attempt to do it very often. But I will tell you the remote viewing this week and why it rose in my alternative abilities was because I saw the same thing. I saw the human ego, the military contractors, the nefarious characters of power and money and greed behind a lot of this. Just it just saddens me. But I know that a lot of these human embodiments are not divinely orchestrating things. Okay, the ego is the ego. Like, it's just distorted to begin with. Like, it tries to get me encapsulated in some bullshit too, and I might go down that rabbit hole for a little bit, but the more and more that I practice and get older, the quicker and quicker I'm just like, I'm not believing that crap. Like, fuck off. Like, anyways, obviously, I use colorful words. Um, it There's a quote a long time ago that I heard, definitely Scorpio ascendant here in tropical, right? That, people that speak the truth use colorful language because we just don't have time to be piddle-footing around, how we're going to communicate things. It needs to be poignant and succinct in a lot of times. So certain words have a tendency to do that. Anyways, yeah, so I didn't say in remote viewing because that's the other thing. It can go two ways. I don't want people to be able to connect to me. I definitely, utilize a lot of protection in spiritual and dimensional ways. But what has been being perpetuated and what a lot of people just went through is both celestially activated and was open, which these nefarious characters know because they have oracles and astrologers and always have, for them to be able to manipulate certain things, but it is what it is. So when I started looking at charts, and one of the first visions after the funny political thing is that there are a lot of people in this area, and me included, that do have Scorpio or some kind of significant Scorpio, because Pluto going into Aquarius is affecting our fourth house, which is home and family. The other thing that showed up is that people really need to start remembering astrology and looking into it, especially people on the east side, especially people that you know on the east side, because we've been triggered to learn this lesson ahead of time because this is the movement into the house for the next 20 years. So, self sufficiency, home, security, however this is showing up for you, it could be showing up in a Cancer, a predominant Cancer, because Cancer is the ruler of the fourth house. Um, there's different astrological alignments that knowing your chart, first and foremost. Secondly, knowing your astrocartography for the area that you're living based off of your astrological birth chart is also that dimensional quality of things, that interwovenness. And that has a lot to do with why people are here as well. In fact, when I started looking into more of the Indian Asiatic regions, and a lot of the people that are here on the east side from the Indian Asiatic regions of the world, there are a lot of correlations with this Pluto into Aquarius that are purposely triggering them. For me, I I know that this area is not for me. It's always been, for the most part, really good to me, and I'm really, really grateful. But just personally speaking, I have been waiting, waiting for some events to start happening, things that I've been being shown, for activations to take place, for me not to have to stay here anymore. And so it really, really was like a hard pill to swallow for me to be in this area this last week and to, um, have such like a disastrous kind of like in my face thing from Pluto. But a place that I didn't have on my radar recently at all, but I had on my radar in the past a lot, especially when I had been channeling the initial four-part epic poetry series that I've been writing, of which the first one is in Naropa University's archives because it's my MFA thesis. I ding ding ding. I just had a ding ding ding. So confirmation. I know. I have been channeling beings since 2012 that are a possible human future event and experience. And they've stayed continuous this entire time, kind of coming in and out. I had other things going on at different points in my life. So sometimes they were very, you know, not in my face, but just always around me. I could feel them, see them, talk to them consistently. Sometimes not. In the last couple of years, not as much. But as soon as I was given, it's interesting that my nose is running. Definitely a sign. Uh, this summer, when I was given the opportunity to be up in an airplane, which is one of the easier ways that I can receive information very, you know, acutely, because I'm out of all of the energetic grid patterns, man-made grid patterns of the cities and on the ground and everything. Ding. I just received another ding. I know. I know. Confirmation. Confirmation. I know. I know. I'm getting all these dings in my earbuds from my phone. Um anyways, when I was up in the air this summer, these two predominant future beings came to me and they said that it's time. It's time. And it really was what triggered what I had just been researching on my own personal space and practicing with omens, but now it's a tangible book because it's an entire practice and it's an entire community that I've now started to move forward with. That is another way of being able to remember the integral and interdimensional interwovenness of everything. They came to me this summer and said, "It is time." And I hadn't really received anything from them for quite a while. But I will tell you, since 2020, And now, really, since the US elections, the things that they have been showing me, good, bad, or otherwise, for humanity's future, and these are different levels of the future at different time periods. So the first one is really after this Dada Kimura, once we move into fully the age of Aquarius. The one after that is shortly after that, within a couple hundred years. The third epic is in thousands of years. And the fourth epic is, how do I say this? From the perspective of God. So I'm carrying all this. I'm carrying many books, many channelings and visions and interpretations inside of me all the time because I am in an omnidimensional beingness and practice now. And fully, yeah. So there's a lot of things that are new to me, new to my remembering all the time with this too. Anyway, since we have been in this time period of 2020, all of the things that they started to show me are now actively being pursued. And I'll talk about those as the epics come about. The first epic isn't published. I am trusting that I am going to be working on that very soon. I believe this next year I am going to start working in letterpress again, and I have a small ode book for those who have ever followed me, and especially my Instagram or social media for years. They knew that I was supposed to letterpress print this poetry ode book in 2020, which didn't happen because I got shifted back to the West Coast because this is where I've needed to be for this time, but it is not where I need to be forever in this lifetime. And this week, after this turbulent kind of, in my face event, and what it really did is it gave me the opportunity to fully step back. It forced me to fully step back and open up and reflect for things to come through because up until the bomb cyclone, I've still just like kind of manically been trying to get things together, doing all this stuff. I juggle a ton of things on my plate all of the time, which kind of makes me happy because I'm a Gemini and I have a lot of air in my chart. And so I really like to be investigating and participating with and contemplating a lot of different things all of the time. Um, but I had been doing that like to a point where I couldn't allow anything to come in, things that had been part of my past that had really, really shown up for me that I had been taking steps forward in since 2012, since I've seen these futures of our human history possibilities. And I had just like, they hadn't gone anywhere at that time. So I was just like, okay, it must be some other place. I've done astrocartography mapping. I've done so much. Ask my sons. They know that I am just like trying to calculate all of the time where I'm supposed to go, where they're supposed to go, what they're going to encounter because of their birth chart while they're there. The people that I work with, I do this with. And this didn't, this was able to show up. So Pluto again, and then everything just kind of like fell into place. I was just like, wow, wow, like so much of this stuff, my PhD thesis, all of this stuff, I was just like, oh my gosh, this this makes so much sense. And as soon as I reached out, as soon as this thing came through, which was through YouTube, which the internet is a divination tool. Okay. It's absolutely a divination tool. I know I keep saying I need to write a paper about this. I absolutely am going to. But one of the things, it's like, look at the astrology, look at things, look at your astrocartography, try to look to find where the maps are, try to find where the energy flows are, try to find the timing of it, all of this stuff, right? You can drive yourself crazy. And then sometimes it'll just happen just like that, right? Even if it was man-made, even if they were manipulating it, there is something here for all of the people that just went through this. and you probably can see it in your astrology and or in your astrocartography. Guaranteed. You had to learn something just like I did because you needed to be able to shift and start seeing, feeling something else clearer. Something that Pluto is now going into and into with Aquarius for 20 something years, right? And I just saw it. I was just like, oh my gosh. I couldn't believe it because as soon as it came through YouTube, and I just was like transfixed on this, and this was something that only got published a couple of weeks ago. And as soon as I looked at it, I was like at the cell phone tower trying to reply to emails and trying to talk to people and stuff. But then I was trying to find connections of this possibility. And as soon as I reached out and emailed them, boom, they're like, oh, we love what you're doing. We're very interested. Let's keep in contact. I was just like, damn, seriously. But you have to be able to remember and have this perspective. So, what else came through this week? Really, really encourage people to look into your charts. I would not be surprised if you had a predominant Scorpio because of fourth house or a Cancer because of home and family for anybody on the east side here. It absolutely was man made. Oh, and this is the other point. I know that this is like an hour long, but if you're still here, thank you. You're amazing. And obviously, this is for you. And if not, you're amazing too. And see ya. um, this was the other thing. There's a reason why it affected this area as bad as it did because we do have a massive hub of technology here. Um, we have a lot of stuff that's going on in Seattle. Like I said, the only time I lived in Seattle proper was in 2020 of that summer, literally chopped 3 blocks away every single freaking night for 3 months, having people march, past the condo at all hours of the night, having to wear earplugs because it just wouldn't stop. It was insanity. Like it was just complete like chaos all of the time, boarded up windows and doors. I did an entire like montage of pictures and clip outs and stuff I ripped off of, that were stapled up to telephone poles in the area. I did a whole montage of this book that's in this library now of what we saw in 2020. You can see it. It's at some like portable notebook library or something like that. And after I submitted that in August of that year to the library, within like a month, they were just like putting this out to everybody else. Like I can see how many people have borrowed the piece that I put together of all the things that were happening during that microcosm here in Seattle during that time. And it's just like continuously checked out, continuously checked out. People are like looking at all of the stranger clippings that I put in it and all of this stuff because I knew at that moment that there was something massive happening historically, especially in this area. And it's happened so many times in the 90s. I can't even begin to tell you how many like historical portals we lived in during the 90s here in Seattle, or that I even felt in the 70s and 80s at points, but definitely during the 90s and into and up to Y2K. Like there's just something here. And my soul was supposed to be here on and off for all of this time, but I'm not supposed to be here anymore. And I know that. And I'm just waiting. Um, and it might take a while, and that's fine. I have a lot more peace about it now. I've been like really, like what's going on. And I have to wait until the other things shake out with these other people and their decisions and their karmas and all of this stuff that I'm just waiting for, that I can feel, that everybody can feel, that my sons can feel. Like it's like their time is up. Your time is up and you've known it for a long time. Anyways, so this area was specifically targeted partly because of the astrology of this area. This area absolutely has a lot of Scorpio in it, okay? Ding. See, I got it. I knew it immediately. I just got another ding. I felt it, seen it immediately, when I was receiving this last week. The East Side has a tremendous amount of Scorpio in it, at least right now. And it's based off of the humans mostly that are here. It's not having to do necessarily with the Pluto nature or archetypal energy in this region itself, but there's definitely a trigger of Aquarius energy here. This was a wake up call to this area, okay? There's going to be a lot of stuff that starts to happen, especially in places like this, based off of the collective's decisions that, just happened in America. And like I said, good, bad, or otherwise, people here are going to have to really be heightened in their awareness of safety, security, stability. Pluto just showed us individually and collectively. So I know I'm not long for this area. I know where it is that I've already been led to. It also very predominantly showed me and blessed me with that path this week. I'm already working towards it. Like, I like connected all the dots on all of this stuff, and it's continually coming through me, and it's just happening, right? Um, but for those that have not been able to figure out or have the bandwidth to been able to step back and have the space to think, what did I just go through? What does it mean? What do I need to start thinking about and preparing or doing in the future? This area and people that decide to stay here, they need you need to be you're being triggered to take this stuff seriously, both man-made and natural. It's just an area that has significantly been shown to the world, um, and it's for a particular reason. So when you see this correlation with a very, very significant astrological mechanism and cycle change, and like on the freaking day, like don't ignore that. Please do not ignore that because your world is just going to be even more chaos the more that you keep your head in the sand about what it is that you were supposed to learn, through what we're experiencing now or what some people had experienced in the last week. So I'm just going to end that here because there's so many examples that I can and will show people in the future about how astrology lines up. But just know this is my experience. I'm telling you about my chart. I know exactly how this is interconnected. It's valid. It always has been valid for tens of thousands of years. It's always been an integral ancient wisdom that has different, context to it, but it's always been available to us to understand and have a deeper perspective of ourselves and the world around us. And yeah, it just like really, really showed the world like pay attention, remember this, remember this, especially if it affected you or people that you know in this area. So the other thing that I wanted to just quickly talk about because this is over an hour is something that has been standing out to me, and it's not anything new. It has to do with astrals and astral traveling, also another like remote viewing, any of these things that are like interdimensional, right? Which I have been practicing and I have been able to continually kind of remember and evolve in my remembering through. And this week I got triggered into new in the last couple of weeks I've gotten triggered into new beingness predominantly. Like I'm just like, okay, Sasquatch. There is definitely something that is coming up for me with that. And I feel like they're calling to me. I feel like this place that I'm going to eventually and this future, like there's just a lot more intercommunication there. Um, but this week alone, just this other aspect of astral with the remote viewing is now being triggered for me to start stepping into and remembering as well. And what I've been shown already, it's just always been there, but it's been in a different way. So astral traveling. Um, I kinda kept this to myself, but it came out this week, so I'm just gonna say it. I've already watched the Wicked movie without going to the theaters this week. I watched the Wicked movie a couple of years ago, actually. They released it around COVID, and they're re-releasing it and trying to make it like it's new, but I already saw and remember all of the plot and all of these different scenes, and I didn't even have to see the trailers. Like, I knew as soon as I started seeing the trailers within the last 6 months, I already saw it. And I'm not really seeing a whole lot of people talking about this, but I have, in the last month, felt a time warp go through my entire body. Like, I knew it was an adjustment of the matrix. And I think that this is actually happening a lot more than I've been contemplating or thinking about or communicating with people. But yesterday, I went to my barber and it just came up. It came up because of all the stuff that I knew that I needed to talk about in this live with the astrology of this week, and the barber was, super fascinated, and it came up in conversation. I said, "I've actually watched the Wicked movie a couple of years ago." And they were like, "Oh my god, like, I have too." As soon as I started seeing Ariana Grande in that costume, I started remembering that I've already actually seen that movie. So, yeah, the whole 3 to 5D, like, I don't even question any of that. I've been living omnidimensionally for years, okay? And my practices just become more and more heightened and remembered as I go because I'm open and receiving to it and cautious and contemplative and, grateful for it, right? Because I stepped through the portal because I got on the boat. Um, and so for those of you that have felt like you already saw the Wicked movie a couple years ago, I never went to any of the musicals. I never talked really to anybody about the musical. Like, I saw it everywhere, in their whole marketing campaign with the green witch and everything like that. I remember seeing that a couple years ago, in Seattle and Pantages and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that was all, like, really big pre-COVID, right, and pandemic. But they released it a couple of years ago, and so some of us can remember it. They can't wipe your memory when you're in your sovereignty. They're having less and less of an effect, even distorting the matrix, even distorting Mother Nature's mechanisms and tools. You're having less and less of an effect on us. We can remember the shit that has happened because we're in the practice of remembering and being connected to all. So quit trying. I know I'm saying this in vain, but quit trying your tricks because a lot of humanity is not having it anymore. And we're not going to go and see a movie a second time because you distorted the matrix when we already saw it the first time and blah, blah, you know? Anyways, this has been a long live. Again, thank you for being here. I'll put timestamps up. I try to always put timestamps up. I'm trying to get a bunch of stuff done because Mercury is going retrograde. It's actively moving into retrograde right now. And I'm just going to tell you this one's going to be a doozy. So I hope that you backed up things. I hope that you did the work to your car that you needed. I trust that during this time that we're in, which is going to be kind of weird, kind of crazy, honestly. I don't even know what to fully expect, but there's going to be some happenings. Okay. There's going to be some happenings from here on out. And this month is no lesser. There's going to be definitely happenings this month, January, February, going into the next year. But I'm looking forward to this time next year, um, because there's going to be a lot of truth, a lot of shit that comes to the surface between now and next year that has to come to the surface and be faced. And whatever side of the ride you chose, that's what you chose. And I, have a lot of sympathy for those that couldn't see the karma. But if you can still see the karma and you can still be open to receiving, even in the face of turmoil, just do your due diligence to be better the next time, to be more prepared, to shore up where you're not secure in your immediate environment, to do the things, especially if you got triggered in an astrological alignment. And especially if you can see the larger collapse of that alignment with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, if it speaks to you, welcome aboard. It's going to be a crazy fucking ride for a while. I already have my exit plan and I am actively engaging that, but it's not for what people think. It's not for the I already have my exit plan and I am actively engaging that, but it's not for what people think. It's not for these political reasons and stuff. It's been a long time coming. And it's actually for all of the right reasons, all of the wonderful, beneficent, beautiful reasons for humanity in the future. And people probably won't realize this about me and what I've known about my embodiment in this lifetime for possibly, I'm being told, centuries until after this embodiment is gone. I'm pretty confident that I'll probably be known within decades after I'm gone. So, but I'm here. I'm queer. It's okay with the pronouns, so I'm good as long as it's a positive connotation. And I love you. I really might not always act like it because I have the ego too. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard, and I get that. But I'm so hopeful. I'm really, really so hopeful for humanity. I know we can do this. I know we can do this. And if you feel that inside too, then I embrace you because we're on the boat together. And if you can't, I'm sorry. At some point you will, but I don't know when that'll be. So have a great Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Bye, everyone.